Hi guys, I'm Mimi G, and today we're going to be doing a sew along to one of my latest Simplicity Early Spring Patterns 8830. Let's get started. All right, we're going to be using Simplicity 8830, and remember that in the back of the envelope you have a list of fabric suggestions, yardage, and notions. Now let's go through all the pattern pieces you're going to need to cut out. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 3, which is the flap for our front patch pockets. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 9, which is the epaulette. Pattern piece number 11, which is the cuff. Pattern piece 8, our neckband. Pattern piece 12, the tie belt. Pattern piece 6, our side pocket. Pattern piece number 10, our sleeve. Pattern piece number 7, which is the carrier for our tie belt. Pattern piece number 2, our pocket. Pattern piece number 5, our yoke. Pattern piece number 4, the back. And pattern piece number 1, the front. All right, once you have your fabric pieces all cut and interfaced, we can start sewing. We're gonna start with our front piece. I want you to go ahead and make your bust dart. Do your stay stitching around your neck. Also do it for your back, and don't forget to interface the center front. Now once you do that, set this aside, we're gonna grab our pocket. Your pocket pattern piece had 4 lines, so you're going to bring 2 lines together. You're going to start stitching, back stitch, and stop at the dot. You're going to do the same thing from the bottom up, and then you're going to join the other 2 lines together, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to back stitch, stitch to your dot, and back stitch, and then do the same thing from the bottom up. Then press your pleat. Okay, we're going to back stitch. Now you're going to do the same thing from the bottom up. Join your other lines together and do the same thing. You're going to do both pockets the same way. Okay, once you have your pleat done and pressed, go ahead and press under 1/4 inch on the very edge of the top of your pocket, and then you're going to fold right sides facing along your fold line. And we're going to stitch all the way around using a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now to make things a little easier for you to turn under the rounded corners, I go ahead and do a longer stitch using a 4.0 length stitch within the seam allowance. No back stitching at the beginning or the end. And then you can use that thread to sort of gather just around the corner to help you turn and press. Okay, once you have pressed all the way around the seam allowance of your pocket, you can go ahead and place it, match up your dots, pin. Now head over to your sewing machine and you're going to edge stitch all the way around your pocket. Okay, once you have your pocket sewn down, we're going to go ahead and do the flap. You're just going to place right sides facing. You're going to stitch using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance down across the bottom and up the side. All right, once you're done sewing your flap, go ahead, turn it right side out, give it a good press. I did some edge stitching around the pocket flap. Then you're going to place it right side down along your markings. You're going to pin and then stitch across. Once you're done stitching across, you're going to fold it back over and top stitch. Once you're done, your pocket and flap should look like this. You can go ahead and make your buttonhole if you're going to make your buttonhole, unless you're using a snap. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and fold my back pleat. You should have had 4 lines. So I went ahead and make little notches just because it's easier for me to see and then join my notches. So I'm going to, the wrong side of my fabric is facing up, although it looks the same on both sides. And I'm going to bring one notch to the other. I'm going to go ahead and stitch across just to hold this down. Then we're going to go ahead and attach our yoke. Okay, once your pleat is done with right sides facing, you're going to go ahead and place your yoke over your back and pin. You should have double notches, so match and pin at your double notch. Now head to your sewing machine and stitch across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you attach your yoke, go ahead and give it a good press, serge your seams, set this aside for just a second and grab your fronts. Now we're gonna go ahead and do the front band, so you should have interfaced a portion of it. You're going to turn, press, and then turn and press along those lines one more time, and then you're going to edge stitch. Once you've edge stitched the front bands, go ahead and give it a good press, and we're gonna attach front to back at shoulders. So grab your back and one front. Go ahead and pin the shoulders together, match your notches. Pin the other shoulder the same way, and you're going to stitch across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Serge your seams. All right, once you have your shoulders sewn and you have stitched down your front bands, you're gonna go ahead and grab your collar. You're gonna grab your interfaced collar piece, and we're going to pin. First, line up your 2 notches that you have on the back. You should also have a marking for your shoulder. And your band is going to extend 3/8 of an inch. Okay, once you have it pinned, you're going to go ahead and stitch your collar down using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once you have it attached, you're going to go ahead and press your seam up towards the collar. You're going to grab your other collar piece, and you're going to press 3/8 of an inch. So what I like to do is I like to do a stitching line that's 3/8 of an inch from the cut edge. That just helps me make sure that as I'm pressing up that I'm doing it evenly. Now we're going to go ahead and pin this to our collar. Right sides facing. Once you have it pinned, you're going to go ahead and stitch using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once you're done, you're going to go ahead and turn it to the right side. Give your collar a good press. Okay, once you've pressed your collar, you're going to go ahead and do one of 2 things. You can either hand stitch the collar closed, or you can pin. I like to pin on the right side, making sure that I'm catching the other side of my collar. And if you're choosing to do it this way, then you would go to your machine and you're going to stitch in the ditch. All right, once you're done with your collar, we can go ahead and place our pockets. You should have markings that you put on the side of your dress so that you can place your pockets where they need to go. You're going to go ahead and place one at each marking, matching up the dots, and pin. You're going to then go to the sewing machine and you're going to stitch using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to do all 4 pockets, each side of your back and your front. All right, once you have your pockets attached, go ahead and press your seam allowance towards your pocket. With right sides facing, you're going to place front over the back. Align any notches. And pin around your pocket. And now what we're going to do is we're going to sew together our side seams. So we're going to start at the top, you're going to back stitch, you're going to stitch until you reach the dot that you should have marked for your pocket, you're going to back stitch, break your thread, and then you're going to continue at the next dot, back stitch, and then continue sewing all the way down to your hem. Once you're done with that, we're going to go ahead and stitch around our pocket. All right, we're going to go ahead and back stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to back stitch, break my thread. Now we're going to sew around our pocket. You're going to do your other side seam and pocket the same way. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and sew our shoulder tabs. So with right sides facing, you're going to go ahead and stitch using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to turn it right side out, give it a good press, and edge stitch. Okay, once you have your tabs sewn, go ahead and if you're making your buttonhole, go ahead and make your buttonhole now. I'm going to go ahead and place this on the shoulder, right? So you're going to align it with that shoulder seam. And I'm going to pin. And then you're just going to go ahead to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch this down. All right, we're going to go ahead and start on our sleeve. So I've already done my 2 rows of easing stitches across the sleeve cap. And I usually like to do it from notch to notch. I know a lot of people do it from the dot to the dot, but I don't ever find that that's just enough. When I do it from notch to notch, it just gives me a more even way to ease my sleeve cap onto my top or jacket or coat or whatever I'm working on. Now with right sides facing, I'm going to go ahead and pin my underarm seam. And I'm going to put my last pin where my dot is. And you're going to go ahead to your sewing machine. You're going to stitch starting under the arm, back stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to stitch until you reach your dot. Then you're going to back stitch and cut your thread. Okay, I went ahead and pressed my seams open, and then I'm doing a double fold at the opening. This is where we are going to be attaching our cuff. So I just turn and then turn again and give it a good press. And then on the right side, you can go ahead and top stitch both sides. You're going to do that to both of your sleeves. Then we'll go ahead and attach our cuffs. Okay, go ahead and grab your cuff, and we're going to go ahead and pin. I'm going to turn my sleeve right side out. Your cuff is going to extend 5/8 of an inch. You also have a notch, so you can align your notch. Okay, once you have your cuff pinned, you can go ahead and stitch around the cuff using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to do your other cuff the same way. Okay, once you have your cuffs attached, go ahead and press your seam allowances towards your cuff. You can go ahead and press up the other end of your cuff, and you're going to fold it up just like this. I'm going to pin, and go to your sewing machine, and you're just going to stitch the ends closed. You're going to do the same thing on the other side. Align and stitch across. Okay, once you've pressed it up, you can go ahead and pin, same as we did for the collar, and stitch in the ditch, or you can hand stitch it closed. You're going to do both of your cuffs the same way. Once you're done with that, we can go ahead and attach our sleeve to our dress. All right, now we're going to go ahead and pin our sleeve to our dress. I like to pin first at the underarm seam and my side seam. Match those up and pin. And then go ahead and align your single notch to your single notch, your double notch to your double notch. Align your dot or your notch, if you made a little notch, to your shoulder seam. Okay, now once you have it all pinned, you're going to stitch around using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to do both your sleeves the same way. Once you have both of your sleeves attached, we're gonna go ahead and set this out for just a second. I want you to grab your ties. I went ahead and stitched them together, pressed my seams open. Now you're going to place it, fold it right sides facing, and you're gonna leave about a 2-inch opening. You're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance along one long end, and then across the short end, and then you're going to start on the other side and you're gonna do the same thing. Then we're going to turn this right side out. All right, once you turn it right side out, give it a good press and close your opening. Now all you have left to do is the hem of your dress. So I went ahead and pressed first because I find it to be a little easier. And then once you have it pressed, you can go ahead and stitch your hem around the curve and onto the other side, do your buttons, and you are all done. Well, I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Please make sure and follow me on Instagram at MimiGStyle. Until next time, peace.